All right, all right, all right. Welcome, everyone, especially you loyal listeners, to another episode here of Agency Intelligence Podcast, where I give you a real agent inside a real agency, giving you the real agency intelligence and not the artificial that they try to make you believe out there. This is Cass, and he's back with my boy BY, also known as Brett Young. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, what is it? Erb and Young? Is that right? Is that how I say
That's
that?
right. That's right.
Right. And it's not HERB for all you loyal listeners out there. I mean, it's really, Brett, you want to hear a funny herb story? God, what a way to start off a podcast. Just thought of this, right? So oh man, loyal listeners, if you were at IAOA, you know this. So I'm the keynote speaker. I'm leading off. I'm doing a great job. And something I always say, Brett, that I say it every time that I speak. Every time I say, hey, a lot of you may think that, wow, where does Jason think of all this stuff, and how does he think of all of it? And I always say, it's always on my back porch drinking 2 bottles of wine. Right? I say that every time, dude. On the stage, Brett, I said, well, you guys may think that I wonder or be thinking where I think of all this stuff from, and I just want you to know it has to do with the 2 bottles of weed. I literally said that on stage, Brett.
It's incredible.
Brett, I said it on stage.
Does it depend on where it depends on where the stage is? More if that's acceptable, I guess, right?
9:30 in the morning, and I was looking around, and there's a bunch of white people. It's probably not a good idea. But no, dude, I'm telling you right now, it was, I couldn't believe it. And it's one of those things, Brett, that your mind is in a situation where it starts reacting quickly, because it's thinking to itself, do I double down on this and act like I meant to say it, or do you back up and you're like, whoa, and and in the middle of that you're thinking and you're weighing the odds and everything in a split second, and it worked out pretty well. I did lean into it, and people thought it was funny, and when I walked off, I'm just like, people are hit me, tweeting about this, 2 bottles of weed for Cass. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And then one of the things I did say on stage is I said, well, listen, if you're a loyal listener, you probably already know or understand. So, yeah, dude, what a way to start out the podcast. But that's a true freaking story. I couldn't believe it did it. Brett, how are you doing, awesome, my friend?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's a good day.
Yeah. We were talking, some of the podcasters like to say, in the green room, right? I guess there's we're supposed to have this green room where right. We have all these cheese and wine and stuff, or cheese and weed, but really it's during the day. It's during the day, Cass, ease up. But no, the cheese and wine, and you guys share all this stuff, but no, we really didn't. But before we were talking, Brett, and one of the things, loyal listeners, we really want to concentrate here on this podcast, besides all of my rants, is the fact that we were talking, Brett, about how the basics of the industry out there really, number one, they should always be taught, right? Continually being taught, but they're getting kind of overcrowded, or the noise is louder than what it needs to be out there, and it's overshadowing some of that stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, I just think it's a great thing because there's so much cool stuff that's happening. There's so much new everything, right? So it's exciting, it's exhilarating, it's cool. It's just every day you turn around, there's so much information to gain. But the mechanics of building a business are very similar than they were 15 years ago. You've got different faces for stuff. You've got digital platforms instead of, analog platforms. You've got networking inside digital landscape instead of networking out in the community. But the basics, the fundamentals of building a big business and scaling a business, are still very much intact, and I think it's easy to get distracted with all the latest and we were just talking about tech, and there's a huge opportunity with all this tech coming on board. But even then, it's like those should enhance the fundamentals, right? Until you have the fundamentals, you're kind of putting the cart before the horse. And obviously everybody does it different, but I think there's a lot to be said about understanding and practicing good fundamentals. And I think that's the same way in business.
I agree. And that's actually some of the good news if you really think about it, because, and what I mean by that is the good news is that a lot of the basics are all the same and will always be the same. And I think sometimes that's when we get doing the same thing all the time is when we get bored, and then we start looking for these other like shiny objects out there.
Sure.
But as we were talking about with indie sales, for all the loyal listeners right now, it is October 18th. It's 12:19. It's our lunchtime. Actually, it's my lunchtime. He's an hour ahead of me. But the thing that I wanted to remind everybody is that we, as of right now, you're probably going to hear more about it. There's going to be Indie Tech 2023 that's going on in Indianapolis, and it's for independent insurance agents and technology for agents and brokers so they can find their independence. All right, that's enough. That's enough on the indie, Jason, and the marketing. But it's got to be that way, you know. A friend said to me, Brett, they said, "Are you really going to take it to Indianapolis?" I said, "Bro, it's all in the marketing. You got to go to Indianapolis at least the first year. Come on, man, it's in the marketing. Got to work this year." I learned something. I learned one thing from Trump. So anyways, so the thing that got us thinking about this was the indie sales. Is that first day they're going to have Mitch Gibson and his group. They're going to have young agents. They're going to be teaching them sales. And like, they don't want to talk digital. They don't want to talk all this stuff. They vocally have said it. They want to get like to the basics. Like, that's one thing I think I'm starting to see that we're forgetting about in all this technology, and get the young people because they can do digital marketing and all that stereotypes that we throw out there. But at the end of the day, are we really like, and I'm questioning this about myself. Travis and I were talking about sales in our office, which we think can be better they're way better than they were a year ago, but we think they can be better. And it comes to us as like, well, the accountability we know is a lot stronger, but the training maybe not be there. And then we're thinking to ourselves, well, where do we get that training? And not just the training of marketing, but back to the basics. And I want to wrap all that together, Brett, to say this new content you've been putting out has been kind of going there, and I think that's why a lot of people are really gravitating towards some of this stuff you're doing. I know that's a lot, but give me your thoughts on that.
I'm humbled by that. I appreciate that very much. So, it's like anybody who puts out content, you hope that it resonates with the people just like how it resonates. You usually put out content that's important to you, and hopefully somebody sees value in it. But
true.
One of the big concepts, my partners, Rod Taylor, I have two partners in the agency. We talk about doing what duplicates and not what works. It's easy to do what works, but doing what duplicates is one of those things that's a little bit more. It's like the devil's in the details. The more the more simple or the simpler that you can make something, the more genius it is to an extent. And I think like sales or marketing or team building or any components where we say, okay, I've learned this, I've mastered this, now I'm good. Where we come back a lot is to say, okay, we might be good, but are our core leadership, are they good? Do they understand this as well as we do? So it's about duplicating that, right? It's about what you said, it's about that training, right? And then at that point, can they teach it? They're modeling us. We become the the mentor in the relationship. They're modeling what we do. And then hopefully at some point, if they've learned it well enough for themselves, now they can teach it. And getting that to duplicate and go multiple levels is very difficult because it gets messy, right? If you've ever played telephone, you know how it works, right? It gets lost in translation. So even though we can learn these things ourselves and think that we go to a conference or go to an event or attend a webinar or sit with somebody for an hour and they teach us something that we have it, that's not mastery. And mastery is a lifelong process. So if you just brought up sales, so I'll take sales for an example. To think that we understand sales and we're done is just, it's misguided. It's one of those things like if you're a professional basketball player and knowing that you know how to dribble the basketball so you don't do dribbling drills, that would be misguided philosophy. That would lead you into a place where that would probably cause some pain. So I think a lot of the basis and the fundamentals of what we do every day from an agency standpoint, first of all, it's a business, not just an agency, right? Like these skills are transferable to any industry that we go into or that we're talking to. It just so happens that we get inundated with the insurance portion. But, sales and all those different marketing arms and all those different components, it's one thing to know them yourself. It's another thing to be able to teach them and then have somebody on your team be able to teach them. And I think that's where I think you can have some explosive growth when you can do that.
Well, and there's this unique thing about us as a business, though, as an industry and an agency, because as you said, a lot of those basics are the same. There are these differences. And the fact that like a sales organization that is dependent upon the next sale has high purpose, high driven sales training, right? Because we've got to stay on top of our game. it's so easy for us, especially as insurance, and this is for you young agents and even the veterans, we know this. It's so easy, Brett, for us to like just be like, well, sales isn't that important because we're still getting paid on the one we did 4 years ago, right? So that drive to that sale is not so big there, right? It allows us to get a little bit lazy. Maybe I'm
right. I mean, and it also, like, the container, like the actual culture that you're around. Are you in a sales centric culture, right? Like,
yes,
if you're around 5 or 6 people and they are driven by numbers and they're driven by doing better than they did the month before that and outdoing their numbers from the year before, that's a very healthy environment, because that's going to produce results. One of the examples I would give is, like, if you put a plant into a pot, that plant is only going to grow up to the level in which that pot is, right? Like, it might not get as big as you want it to get as far as the pot is concerned, but it has the opportunity to get that big. But if you put it in a small pot, it's only going to grow to the level and size of which that pot is. So being around an environment that has a sales-centric culture or that has that different mindset, is arguably just as important as the actual mechanics itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It is. And I think that's what we're missing today in the world. And one of the things that, when I talk about training, one of the things that I'm speaking of this not as an old dude, just as a realist. These online courses are great and they help, but there's nothing like being in a classroom, learning eye to eye with people as they're writing on the board, and you're going through the boring ass King James Version part of the policy where you're reading all this damn wording and stuff like that. Yep. That's how you learn, though. That's where it's at. And I can say that my own education in insurance has faltered in the last 2, 3, 4 years because I have been taken out of those classes. And then, like, when I go to the IAOA or I go to Applied, right, or I go to ITC, I go to these conferences, I'm not really truly learning anything about back to that sales basics, the things that I did. One of the things I have not done in the last year or two, but I did this, Brett, for like 13, 14, 15 years. Every January I read the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I don't know why I got away with this. I guess I could blame COVID, but I really don't know, because it was every January I'd read it. And the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell really kind of taught me that, like, if you know the basics of life and the laws of leadership and the laws of anything at a basic form, you can kind of predict the future, right? You know how things are going to happen when you see that law or someone journey down that. Any favorite books or any thought? Have you read that book?
I have read that book. It's been a minute, but patterns, right? Like patterns. Life is just a series of patterns. Business is just a series of patterns. People is just a series of patterns. And if you study patterns, you start to notice the same things over and over again. And if you start to notice the same things over and over again, we can predict what comes next. Sequencing. So, no, that's a great thought. And I think so much of everything that we do, of course there's stuff that happens that we can't predict, but the majority of what we do is actually very predictable, right?
Very predictable.
And that's why the surprises, hurt so much, because we almost come accustomed to, being able to predict what's coming next. So, yeah, that's a great thought. And from a leadership standpoint, that's even more difficult, because the weirdest people are the weirdest units ever. They just don't, on like the micro, if you looked at like 1 or 2 different people, it doesn't seem like there's a pattern. But if you look at 100 people, there's a very distinct pattern, right?
There is. The
variable of, the variance, or I should say, gets significantly smaller once you have a large amount of people. And if you knew what those patterns were, how much more successful would you be in influence? How much more successful would you be in recruiting and team building and attracting the right type of people to your business? I mean, it's awesome.
The law of the lid is the one that got me thinking about what you were saying with the pot, because he shows in a graph that you can only be as effective as certain things. So there's certain things like you can grow, you can become the smart as you want, or you could be as strong as you want, whatever. But if you don't have leadership capability, those things are all put into a lid, and your effectiveness is proportionally to the amount of your leadership. It's so strong. Let's talk about team building, dude. I know that's something that you and I have talked about on the side, and you've tell us a little bit about your agency. When did it start? How'd that go?
By the way, I just want to say that that leadership clip just now. You're going to have to send me that. It's so good. Your effectiveness is only as good as your leadership. I 100% agree with that. Yeah, so we started, 11 years ago now? A little over a decade ago, which is crazy. And we were a scratch startup agency. I had a background in the supplemental benefits for about 5 years, got into the P&C space for a year, and just was in an environment, a pot that just didn't make sense for me. And my business partner now and his wife were going to come work with me at that agency. It ended up not working out. My brother was getting out of UCF, Go Knights, at the school at the same time, and he hated this internship that he was in, so he was like ripe for the picking. We always joke about it all the time. He's like, whatever I got to do to not do that, I'm in. So we went and interviewed at a bunch of big box agencies because we wanted to build a business inside of a business. I knew how hard it was to build an independent agency from scratch. Like, it's not a small feat. And it just didn't jive, man. The culture didn't fit what we wanted to do. It just wasn't going to be a good fit. So we had this crazy idea of starting it and just starting one policy at a time and doing it. And the three of us set out to do it and realized how hard it was about a year in, and then 3 years later finally figured out that this might actually work. And then 5 years started doing pretty well, and then fast forward today, we've got about 32 team members. We'll open our 6th office at the end of this month, which is super exciting, and we're all here in Florida.
That's awesome. So you guys work out of the same building?
So we've got Rod Taylor and I do here in Orlando. That's where I live. But we have a Melbourne office that's about an hour and a half away. We have a Jupiter office that's about 2 hours away south. They're separate, obviously. And then we have a St. Pete office. So we're spread
Rod
out.
And Taylor are all together though.
Yeah, we're consolidated. Obviously, we're running around all over the place and seeing everybody, but as far as the day-to-day is concerned, we do get to grace each other's presence in the halls of the same office, which is super cool.
So you guys are I know all three of you, and none of you guys are egotistical, so take this the right way. At what point in time did you realize this is more, if we're going to go where we need to go, this is more than about me and Rob and Taylor. We're going to have to invest in our people. We're going to have to build a team. What was that? When was that? Do you remember when that light switch clicked on?
Man, yeah, because that's obviously you're talking, it's tough because you have three people, you have three mouths to feed, right? You're like, okay, how does this work? Fortunately for us, the business that we had built beforehand and we had worked together, we really learned a lot of the team building components that we still implement today. So we knew from day one that we were starting an agency to build a big agency, and it was much more about the team building aspect of what we were going to do, rather than us putting up big numbers. Obviously, we've all put up big numbers, and we did that. That's the first step, right? That's you got to be able to do it first. Right. But from day one, like beginning with the end in mind, it was always one of those things. Was like, all right, we have to build to scale because in order for us to do well and have the three of us do well, like we've got to build this thing to scale. And we just knew that obviously to do that was going to take more than just us. Yeah.
And so are you guys commercial lines people or personal lines? What do you do?
So Taylor runs our personal line side, Rod runs our commercial line side, and then I basically run the company and help both of them obviously grow those departments. But our commercial is about 30% of our business, and our personal line is about 70% of our business.
Commercial, how did you guys determine? Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, commercial came on about 5-6 years after we started, and we transitioned to that. So it's a little later in its, in its bloom cycle, if you will.
How did you three determine the leadership structure?
God, that's a great question. A lot of conversations. It used to be just the three of us. There was no hierarchy we're equal partners. So as far as hierarchy concerned, like we all make the exact same amount of money. We split everything. If somebody writes a big account, it doesn't matter. We don't do that. We're equal partners. But from a hierarchy standpoint, it came very clear after reading a lot of Jocko's books and a lot of that leadership training that there's no chain of command. Because of not being ego driven, we didn't want to put one, a hierarchy above the other, because we are equal partners. We got this business to be equal partners. But we realized that the lack of chain of command was causing inefficiencies in our business. I mean,
That's right.
The chain of command is not an ego thing. A chain of command is about operating efficiently, which helps everybody. So at that point, probably about maybe 5 or 6 years ago, we just decided that it was going to make sense to delineate a chain of command, and it just ended up being the way that it is now, based upon all of us unanimously kind of figure out where's our skill sets, where's our skill sets and where are we going to be most successful. Rod's a big business. He comes from a really large sales environment before he came into insurance. He's run big sales teams. He's done really big contracts. I mean, it just makes sense. He's a whale hunter, and he's really good in that space. My brother is he's a point guard by trade as far as basketball is concerned. He is very check it off the list. He's very tactical. He is very run the plays, exactly what it is. He's,
Wow.
And then I'm a little bit more of a big thinker as far as strategy is concerned and about connecting all of these pieces together. So it just made sense for us to do that way to run the business better. But it was kind of tough, man, to be honest with you, because, you do feel a little bit of a, we're equal. We're equal.
Right.
And, for you to delineate that is almost counterintuitive. It feels wrong. But I can tell you our business has seen a exponential increase because
Absolutely.
of that change. Yeah.
The great paradox, though, because it's uncomfortable to you guys to have that conversation, but it's a very uncomfortable thing to your team to not have that conversation, because they're sitting there going, who really at the end of the day is going to fire me, right? Is it going to be Taylor because he just decides, or does Brett override him, right? And maybe that's still, that scenario still happens the same way, but to them, I think it's one of the most unnatural things that we do. So here's what I explain, and I bring this up for a reason, because this is something that we listen to the Simon Sinek's. We listen to all these people who really probably never ran a business in their really entire life, and we think that they're the god of all this. But it comes down to the point in time, I tell my staff, I say, we stand shoulder to shoulder. No person is above or in front of the other. Now, if the government decides to walk in the door, I have to step forward, right? If they say, hey, who's in charge here, right? I have to. But that was my thought from the beginning, and I realized, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years back, that shit don't work. Especially when you start getting a lot of people. Like, I still explain it that way, but they also have to know as an organization, here's exactly how it is. Because Travis and I are 50-50 partners.
Okay.
Same exact thing. We're 50-50 partners.
Yep.
Travis is a very unique guy. He's 10 years younger than me, and he told me after we got together and we really started going and we were going to come together as partners, he told me, he said, this will always be your baby. I'm buying in and we're going to grow it together, but at the end of the day, I'm always willing to play second fiddle. He said that. He sent me an email. It was a fantastic email he sent me after Christmas one day.
That's cool.
And it wasn't him saying, you're in charge, I'm not. He was just like, hey, listen, we're to be organizational, to be with operating a team that we're trying to grow. We've got to say somebody over the other.
Yep.
And how we always say it is, I'm the managing partner and then he's the senior partner. And that allows them to kind of understand that I am the one that I'm just like you, Brett. I'm really not involved in the business as much as people think that I am. People wonder where I get more time to work. My job is to train the commercial guys. Mm-hmm. Not to judge their sales and stuff. That's Travis and that's Jeremy and other people that are their sales. But I feel as if when it comes to nonprofit commercial insurance, I'm able to train them in a way that's very different than a lot of that other stuff.
I think one of the biggest gifts you can give your team is clarity, right?
Yes.
Uncertainty and a lack of clarity creates uneasiness. And I 100% agree with you that it's not fair to your team to say, just talk to any of us, and we'll all, we just share it. And that was my experience prior to this when I came from the agency that I was at. And it was a family agency. And how many independent agencies are family agencies, right?
Lots.
So, and they don't want to create this chain of command, which I like the word chain of command, because chain of command says it's not about above or below. It's a matter of series of and a sequence of decision making that allows you to move in a systematic way. So
love that.
They don't but they don't want to delineate a chain of command, because then that might hurt somebody's feelings or put somebody on the defensive. And it's like, if we can all put our egos in a box for a second and draw this out how you would draw it out if we were a publicly traded company, how would we draw this out and have that level of accountability and that level of non-biased? It would give every team member clarity to say, okay, if I have this issue, I need to go to Taylor. If I have this issue, I need to go to Rod, or I need to go to, my team lead first, and then the team lead reports to Taylor, so, and that level of clarity allows you to move faster. And that's what you're looking to do, right? Decision making quicker, faster.
And think if Rod got upset by this. So you and Taylor are going to prevent doing what Rod, because you don't want to upset Rod, but yet the other 30 people are going to be upset because you didn't do something, right? And I think agency owners, if you really just step back and listen to that for a minute, if there's conversations you don't want to have, and you have 20 people, 10 people, 30, 50, the more it's the worse. We're really not wanting one or two people to be inconvenienced while everybody else is inconvenienced. That's real powerful. That's good stuff.
And there wasn't like big time issues with it, but I can tell you, Taylor was one of the biggest components to pushing this, and I mean, here you got to talk about a non-ego, right? We're equal partners. Like, look, here's the way that I think this should be. I think it should be this way. And we're like, yeah, but, are you sure? And he pushed it, and it was one of the best decisions we've ever made. But the point is, you don't have to wait till there's problems and an employee's screaming and saying, I don't have clarity. This doesn't make sense to me. Who do I, like, if you don't have a chain of command, regardless of if there's issues or not, you're limiting your growth. You really are. And it's very difficult for an employee to operate in an environment where they don't have clarity on who they go to for things, let alone, who's in charge of different things, or, if there's an issue or something like that. I 100% agree with you, Cass. You're doing your team a complete disservice.
You're 23, 25, 26. I'm going to ask this question two different ways. You're 23, 25, 26, guy, gal out there, but you know what you know today, Brett. What are you giving them in advice? They've been in the business about 6 months to a year. They're kind of liking it, but, they're in and out. What are you giving them in advice?
Wow, what a good question. That's like the loaded question. So if I was to go back and tell myself, let me frame it that way. Number one, I would say it's worth it. And it doesn't look like it's worth it until you're at least 3.5, 4 years. People say give things, people say give something 5 years. I think you need to give the insurance business 10 years, candidly. I mean, so I would tell them that it's worth it. And if you can learn the skill sets to be successful here, you have a path to unlimited. I mean, there's literally no ceiling to what you can do. And we talk about this all the time, relative income versus absolute income. I'm not talking about absolute income. Absolute income is how much money you take home. That's only one component of means. Like, that's not what we're after. If I'm after income, or if I'm after monetary value, that's only to gain other things, right? So, but the things that this business gives somebody, if you're a young person, is just the flexibility, right? The time freedom, the autonomy, the pride. You know something that 99% of the world doesn't know, and is going to rely on you. You have a noble cause. You're helping somebody restore life when the most devastating thing happens. You're a member of the community that's upheld. You have there's all this centric stuff that's centered around creating an incredible life for yourself. It's engaging, right? Like, it's always changing. There's all these different components that give you relative income, not just absolute income. You have leveraged in this business. If you want to build a team, if you want to build an agency, you can exponentially increase the value that provide. There's just so much to this business that I just can't see in other industries. So I'm just such a huge fan of deciding that this is the business that's going to give you what you need, and then just stop looking around. Stop looking around and seeing if there's another way. Like, you're in the right spot. I think financial services created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet, and that's the play that we play. So, you can be average in this business and do really, really, really well. So, make a decision on this is for you, and then use all your energy to become great at it.
You know me, you're so smooth and you like it and you're caressing, the English language and words. And I get, just because I can't even think about it any different, is that I realized that as I got older in this business, that I was told a bunch of, and I like to use the word lies because it works, but it's not lies, it's myths, mistruths, right? Like I was told that, that the more carriers I had, the more business I would write. That's not true. That's not true. The just different things. Okay, these things that we've been told, and I want to write a book on it, Brett, because what I want to say is that believing those things, as you said, kind of in a way, like letting other factors attribute to you, helps you. Well, doesn't help you. Prevents you from knowing the 5 truths of insurance. And you talked about them. As you were saying them, I was clicking them off. But the 5 truths is a flexible schedule. To be able to never miss one of your kids' games or whatever is important to you, you know what I mean? Unbelievable. Maybe you have a mental condition that only allows you to work 20 hours a week. You can make a good living in this industry working 20 hours a week. Most agents do. The second thing is financial freedom, right? I say it all the time. I've met people I never thought I'd meet. I've went places I never thought I'd go, and it's given my family a life I never thought that I'd give them. That's the God's honest truth. The second thing you said, or the third thing, is a community contributor, right? Being actually contributing your time and your resources and your money to something that's given you so much or is giving you so much. How great is that? Empire builder. Right? You get to build your own empire. And the great thing about working in an empire is you get to build your own little piece of the empire, or the empire doesn't grow. Right? You're just not doing this job that's meaningless. Like, you're doing something every day, no matter who you are in the agency, right? And then the fifth thing is mentor. And I believe that if you listen to the noise that's out there, it's going to prevent you from finding those 5 truths. And those are the 5 truths of insurance that make it just the greatest industry God has ever created, right?
I love
think that's what you were saying, and all those words you were spitting out.
Yeah, it's so much better when you say it, though. Yeah, that was great. I love
like
that. You should write a book. I like
it.
That.
Sounds like we're going to sit here and fall in love with each other. That's I guess what it is. So anyways, Brett, I didn't realize it, dude. This has been such a great conversation. We've been 32 minutes, and I try to keep these now between 20 to 30 minutes, but I don't want to cut it short for you, loyal listeners. I promise me and Brett will do this again, because, wow, I really am blown away. It's been 32 minutes. I thought it was like 15, 20 minutes long. That's crazy. Anything that you want to say, Brett, that we didn't talk about? I feel as if there's a lot, but
I just love what you're doing, man. I just respect the community that you're building. The people that I've met just from, kind of the platform that you've put together, and you've aggregated such quality people that all want to get better and not only be better agency owners, but just be better people. So I'm thrilled to be on. I just want to tell you, keep doing what you're doing, and I just appreciate it, man. You're doing great work, and people appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, Brett. I appreciate it. I really, truly do. I am building some excitement, so that you mention it, I'll mention it. March 22nd, loyal listeners. Get this, Brett. March 22nd of July 2013, I produced my first podcast 10 years ago.
Wow.
For almost 10 years. I've produced 800 and some plus podcasts. And I got to tell you, loyal listeners, I don't know if it's 800. I think it's more than that. But I knew that was the last count like a couple months ago. So I'm just saying that right now. But I'm going to have an exact count for you. And I'm so excited. I can't believe, Brett, it's went so fast like you and I's conversation was, to sit back there. And actually, truthfully, the matter is I really actually did 2 podcasts before that. But I did it on video. And then I would strip off the audio because I didn't have a device in 2013 that would record just the audio. Like we have a million of them now. So I would record myself on my camera, and then I would strip off the audio, and that's how I would produce my podcast back then.
That's unbelievable.
Man. So yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. People have no idea how unbelievable that is until you're actually trying to do it and running an agency. But I appreciate it very much. Thank God for people just like yourself. If there's anything I did, I was able to create platforms so people like you, Brett, could really come out there. There's a lot of noise right now, and I'm hearing a lot of great things about you. I really, truly am. If loyal listeners, if you're listening, be sure to follow Brett on LinkedIn. I don't know. Are you on Instagram? Where else are you putting out your videos, Brett?
LinkedIn and Instagram. That's
okay. See, I'm not an Instagram dude, so I'm not seeing him there. I love it. I don't know if it's the video that people are shooting in or the way LinkedIn puts it, but it like puts your face real close, but your body's close. Have you noticed that it looks differently, the video, or is it just me?
I think it might be you, Cass. 10 years of podcasting might have got to you, man.
Cass forgot what video looked like. But no, seriously. This is on YouTube. So dude, to be honest with you, our downloads of audio are going to be way down on this, Brett. The video YouTube is going to be up because everybody wants to see your sexy ass, okay? I mean, the guys are talking about how they need sales training. The girls are like, yeah, I want sales training, but I want it from him because, I can get that sales training from him. So anyways, Brett.
Hey, any publicity is good publicity, right? So
I say that all the time. The Sunday of Super Bowl, when Janet Jackson's breast was exposed, her album went to #1 the next day, right? Any publicity is good publicity, as bad as that may be in this world we live in. And people may abuse that a lot, but gosh, that's the truth, Brett. That is the truth, and we'll take anything we can get. So anyways, hey, I want to tell you, all you loyal listeners, you know what I do because I do it for you. Tell me your thoughts and tell me your ideas, and I'm going to tell the world what you have to say. This has been JC, he's been BY, and we are OUT.